Hi, welcome to the Yarn and Yarns YouTube channel. My name is Angela. All of the places you can find me online should be linked in the description box down below. I'm most active over on Instagram, where you'll find me as both Yarn and Yarns and Rainbow Ange. As always, I've got a fly buzzing round, fab. So much for joining me this week. I really do appreciate you spending your time with me as I sit and chat about my adventures in knitting and spinning and crochet. As you can see, we are in a different location this week. I am recording outside in my garden. My garden is a tip at the moment. It's shameful, but anyway, this is not the exotic location that I'd hoped it to be this week. You may remember, if you watched last week's video, that I mentioned that I was waiting for an external microphone to arrive to help me with outside recording. Well, it did arrive and we had a little play with it, and I couldn't get the sound working properly. So I went back and revisited the listing where I purchased it from, and between us buying the microphone and it obviously arriving and having some time to use it, the details on the listing had changed, and it turns out that it wasn't compatible for what I wanted it to be after all. And I know that the listing had changed because both James and I double checked before we ordered. So that's a little bit frustrating. It's had to go back. I'm now waiting on a new microphone to arrive. So for now I thought I'd take a chance and just record out in my garden. So we might get a little bit of ambient noise. There's a slight breeze today, so I'll see how it goes. Worst case scenario, I shall re-record again later inside. Hopefully I won't have to do that. I want to say a very big thank you to everyone who has been able to donate to the podcast via the coffee link. You'll find that down below. As I mentioned when I first started that option, I would be completely transparent about any donations that I received. And this week I received another £15 worth of donations through that link, for which I am truly appreciative. It really does help me gather this new equipment that will help hopefully improve the videos that I put up here on YouTube. So that extra money is going to go towards the microphone. The new microphone that I've got to order is actually more costly than the previous one. So that new microphone is going to cost £40, and I've already got £18 worth of donations from last week and the leftover of the week before to put towards that microphone. So I really am thankful for anyone who has been able to make a donation to help me offset the cost of that equipment. I am using my tripod today, which was also made possible by my coffee donators, so thank you so much. I appreciate it's not within everyone's means to support the creators that they watch financially. A couple of people had reached out and asked if there was a way to support the podcast, so I am grateful for anyone who has been able to make a donation through that link. I also wanted to mention, before I get into the main content, there's still 1 week left to enter the giveaway that I am currently hosting. So if you pop back 2 episodes now, I can't remember the episode number, but it is titled giveaway, you'll have an opportunity to be entered for a draw, just as a way of me giving a little something back to you and saying thank you for joining me and watching me every week. Posting the prize, a braid of fibre or a skein of yarn. To enter that giveaway, you need to just leave a comment on, not this video, but on the giveaway video, just letting me know something that's happened to you that's brought you a smile or a bit of joy. There are some awesome answers in that giveaway comment section. If you're having a bad day, you might want to just hop on over to that video and read those comments, because I know some of them will probably make you smile. Right, on to the content proper. I've got a giant basket of stuff. Just see if I can lift it up to show you. So I probably need to stop waffling on and get going. Because most of the stuff connected to this is at the top of my basket, I'm going to start with spinning this week. So for spinning, I have got a finished spin to show you and a couple of spins in progress. So the first thing to show you is my finished spin from last week. At the end of last week's video you will have seen me hold up 3 bobbins full of Cambrian yarn from Hilltop Cloud. They were ready to ply together, so the plying has now been done, and this is the beautiful skein of yarn that resulted from that plying session. So this is fibre from Hilltop Cloud. I'm spinning for Team Hilltop Cloud this year, so I'm trying to spin mostly Hilltop Cloud fibre through the Tour de Fleece, which we're 2/3 of the way through. Can you believe it? There's only 1 week left. The fibre for this is Kate, who is the brains behind Hilltop Cloud. This was her special Tour de Fleece colourway this year called Pays de Gaule, and it's a Cambrian base, which is a mix of Blue-Faced Leicester and Welsh Mule, I believe. And the braid was beautiful colours of green and blue and purple with some yellow, orangey colours in there. It's a representation of the yellow jersey, which I believe the winner wears for each stage of Tour de France. So yeah, that's the resulting yarn. It's a traditional 3-ply. And I had a tiny little bit of yarn left as I plied. It's inevitable that 1 or 2 bobbins run out before the others. So once the first bobbin ran out, I decided just to chain ply what was left on the other bobbins. So I've also got this tiny little hank of chain plied yarn, so this will be kind of a bit of a self striping affair. I got 20 meters on there, and I think there was about 200 or 250 meters on this skein, so I'm looking forward to coming up with the perfect project to knit this up into. On my spindle this week I have been working on the natural braid of Cambrian fibre. I think I might have showed it off last week, and I've spun through the whole 100 grams of that fibre. So I've got 3 lots of fibre here hanging out on my fancy storage bobbins, and then this was the last little bit of fibre that I plied up yesterday. I took this along yesterday to the Cardiff Sip and Stitch meetup. It's a new group that started meeting once a month on a Sunday in one of the local coffee shops in Cardiff, and I went to the first meeting a couple of months ago. I wasn't able to go last month because it was James's birthday, but I went back again this month. It's a really lovely group, and I got to have a go on an e-spinner as well. My lovely friend Sophie, who is Scarpunk Socks on Instagram, she has recently purchased an Ashford e-spinner, so she graciously brought that along and allowed me to have a little play on that, and it was really fun. So I'm desperately trying to work out whether I can afford to save up for an e-spinner right now. Anyway, I am digressing. So yes, my Cambrian natural is all spun up, so hopefully today, later if I get time, my plan is to ply that natural yarn with these lovely colours from the Steam pack. This is again another Cambrian base, and I spun these up last week. And yeah, so I'm planning on taking a strand of this and a strand of the natural and plying it together, and I think it's going to create a really hopefully fun and interesting mulled yarn. It should be quite high contrast, and most of the colours are quite dark with the exception of this sort of beigey steamy grey. So I think, yeah, it will be just a fun experiment to see what kind of yarn I get from that. And then on my wheel this week, I have also been undertaking a fun little experiment. Hopefully I still have on my phone somewhere a little recording of the fibre before I started spinning it. So I'm going to pop that in here. I'm about to start my first wheel spin this week, so I thought I would chat to you about the fibres before I start playing around with them. This is also my first time having a go with my tripod, so if I seem a little bit awkward, it's because I do feel a bit awkward, and I don't know why. For some reason I feel a bit more self-conscious talking to a piece of equipment on a tripod rather than it propped up on a chair. I don't know, maybe it just feels a little bit more kind of official. Professional, I don't know. I have got these 3 bumps of fibre from Hilltop Cloud. I thought I'd try a couple of quick spins or quicker spins on my wheel. Obviously there's 150 grams worth of fibre here, so it's not going to be the quickest overall to finish all of them. So far I've spun up 2 what in effect are full braids. So the yellow sparkle was 90 grams, so close to, and then the Pays de Gaule colourway I actually had 110 grams of fibre. So I thought it'd be fun to have a little bit of a play and to sort of get a few things finished maybe slightly a little bit quicker. So my plan is to have a good play with these. I purchased these at Wonderwall this year. They're superfine merino, 19 microns, and they're all naturally dyed. This corally one, which is more orange than it's showing up on the screen, it's looking a bit pink, but it's definitely got a sort of light coral tone to it. That one is geranium. I don't know if you can, probably can't read the labels because my camera's not great at focusing. The next one is plum, this lovely purple, and then the sort of pale yellow is called amber. I've picked these three out because I thought they looked nice together. So I'm going to have a little bit of a play, and I'm going to break down each of these 50-gram bumps, and I'm going to spin up for a few mini skeins. So my plan is to end up with a mini skein in each of the three sort of solid colours. And then I will take another section of each colour, spin up singles and ply them together. So I'll have one which is a combination of the yellow and the coral, one which is a combination of the yellow and the plum, and the same for the others. So I will ply these two together as well. I think that's all the combinations, isn't it? Yeah. And then I'm going to do one little section which is a combo of the three. So most of these will be 2 plies just because it's easier, and then I'll have one kind of 3 ply. So yeah, throughout the week I have been having a little play and making up some mini skeins from those 3 bumps of natural fibres, and so far this is my little collection of mini skeins. See if I can find a way to, there we go, show you those. So as you can, these are all 2-ply yarns. So far, as you can see, I've 2-plied some of the purple, which was called plum colourway, some of the amber, and some of the sort of orangey coral, which was geranium. And then I've also had fun plying some of the colours together. This is the plum and the geranium plied together. I've also plied together the amber and the plum. I have spun up singles for the amber and the geranium, so they're on my wheel and will be plied today. I didn't bring those out to show you because I'd have to take all the bobbins off and everything. And then I have 3 more lots of fibre. Actually, I've got them in my basket, all split down and ready to go. And this final mini skein is going to be a 3-ply of all the colours. So yeah, it's been quite a fun one to work through this week, because every day or so I've ended up with like a finished mini skein. So it's been sort of quite gratifying to have little finished objects rather than have to spin my way through the whole braid. It often takes me a week or so to make a decent sort of skein of yarn, something like this. So it's been quite nice to you know, have finished objects every couple of days. Everything for spinning. I think we shall move on to crochet. For crochet this week, I have a finished object and a work in progress to show you. Both of them are currently living in my Seaside Birds bag. I love these oyster catchers. I made this bag myself last year or the year before. So I'll show you the finished object first because it's only a little one. On Saturday, I hosted a group in the shop. They come and meet in the shop once a month. They're a really lovely group of ladies, and they tend to sort of put on little mini workshops for themselves. And this week, one of them had brought along a little sort of doily or coaster pattern. And the idea was everyone chose different thicknesses of yarns, different colours, and we all work through the same pattern just to see what we ended up with, and how yarn choice and hook size and things affected you know, the same pattern. So I crocheted up this little rainbow coaster, which I think is really quite cute and fun. So this yarn is the Perth Queensland sock yarn, and it's a bright rainbow of colours. I don't have the ball with me. I used it to make a little pair of rainbow wristers a few months ago when the yarn first came into the shop. The rest of the ball's just been hanging out in the shop waiting for me to turn it into socks or something. So I thought I'd grab that and use a few grams to make this really fun little rainbow coaster. So it was a really nice project. It took just over an hour or so to crochet this up. And I have promised by the next session that I will try and make a large version of this. Not in this yarn. I've got some sort of quite thick t-shirt yarn hanging around in my stash upstairs. So I'm going to make the same pattern on a much bigger hook with much thicker yarn. And then next month when they return to the shop, everyone's going to bring in all of their experiments so we can lay them all out on the table and see what everyone's finished projects look like. Some ladies like myself managed to finish their coasters in the session, others didn't quite make it, so yeah, it should be quite fun next month to see everyone's projects. So yeah, a really small but really fun finished object for crochet. My work in progress is the Lost in Time shawl, which I showed the beginning of last week. It hasn't grown tons. This project probably is only going to get worked on a Wednesday morning for a couple of hours while I'm in the shop with my crochet group. But this week I managed to put on the first of the main pattern repeat. So when I showed this last week, I was just here on this sort of light beige row after the sort of shiny blue, and as you can see it's grown a fair bit, but between that sort of metallic-y blue there and the end represents one full pattern repeat of this shawl. So I'm now just going to be adding extra pattern repeats until the shawl is as big as I want it to be. I think the pattern itself recommends 4 or 5 repeats, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, we'll just see how it goes. I am enjoying the pattern much more now. I've got kind of a much bigger fabric to work with. I found it a little bit tricky at the start. This yarn has got quite a halo to it. It's a wool acrylic blend. It looks like a singles, but it is plied, but it's got that sort of singles feel to it, and I just found it quite difficult to distinguish between my stitches and my spaces on some of these smaller rows, just because I think of the halo on the yarn. But now I've got the pattern going, it's much easier. Apologies for the change of location, and the light is not very good in here at the moment. I'm not sure if it will be obvious when I come to edit the video, but my neighbour sometimes looks after her daughter's dog, and the dog is very, very yappy, very vocal, and it gets let out into the garden and basically just barks, and it'll be out there for ages. So no chance of me peacefully enjoying my garden today, and sadly the neighbour and her family members just don't do anything to try and control that dog's quite aggressive vocalisations. I have had to come inside to finish off the video. I think I just about finished talking about my Lost in Time shawl, so I quickly bundled it up into the bag, so it's got all knotted up and ends everywhere. So yeah, this is the shawl as I have it at the moment. Just got to carry on and complete the rest of the pattern repeats until the shawl is as big as I want it to be. I don't think I'll end up keeping this shawl myself. I'll probably donate it once it's finished, but it's a pattern that I've wanted to try for ages, so I'm really glad that I've got the opportunity to do that, and it'll give me something to work through probably for quite a few weeks while I am sitting with my crochet group on a Wednesday morning. So the final section this week is knitting, and I have one finished object and a couple of works in progress to share with you this week. So my first project is a finished object, and this one hasn't been on the videos for ages. It's one of the projects that I started as my 12 cast-ons of Christmas madness right back at the beginning of the year, well, end of last year, beginning of this year. And for those of you who may have joined me for a while, you might know that every Christmas time I tend to take a little bit of time off work, and I will try and get 12 new projects on the needles. There'll be projects that either patterns that I've wanted to make or yarns that I have in my stash I've really wanted to get on the needles and just not found time for, and then I basically just leave them on the needles and they get worked on and finished as and when. There's no rush to them. It's just kind of a fun exercise and a way for me to get some of those long awaited projects on the needles. Well, on Christmas Day, I was gifted a kit by my lovely other half, James. He purchased for me this book by Kate Davies, the Milwaukee Heeds book, which is a pattern collection. Not all of the designs in here are Kate Davies. It's a collection from lots of different designers, and basically there's a ton of different hat patterns in here. Using the yarn that Kate launched, which is called Milwaukee Tweed, I think. Let me just grab a label, make sure I'm telling you the right thing. Yes, Milwaukee Tweed, that's the label for it. So James purchased me a kit and the pattern book to make the Tetagouche hat, which is a pattern by, let me quickly look that up, Virginia Sattler Raymer, and there is the pattern in the book. This week I decided to pick up a hat. I finished a couple of larger projects recently, so I thought it was time to tackle some of the smaller sort of languishing whips that I have in my pile. So my Tetagouche is finished. Well, it's almost finished. I've got a whole mess of ends to weave in inside there, look. But the knitting is finished, and I have also soaked and blocked this hat, and it's turned out beautifully. I really love this pattern, so let me just pop it on for you. It's so hot here today, definitely not hat weather, but it's a really nice size. It comes down and covers over my ears. It's a beautiful pattern, and obviously the stranded colour work, even though the yarn is very fine yarn, will keep me nice and warm when the cooler weather comes around. So yeah, I'm really happy to have this one finished. The pattern was absolutely lovely to work on. I have a couple of thoughts about the yarn and the kit in general. So the yarn colours are beautiful, and the yarn itself is fairly soft for this type of yarn. I've worked with other sort of really fine tweeds, and I am working with some other very fine sort of wool yarns at the moment that are quite toothy to the touch. This is nice and soft. It's a blend of 70% wool and 30% mohair. So maybe it's the fact that it's a blend rather than a pure wool that makes it a little bit softer. But I didn't massively enjoy the yarn. There's some really thick and thin bits. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find a bit offhand. There's quite a few sort of slubby tweedy bits, which I don't mind, but I did find that in some parts the yarn was so very thin that I'm just a bit worried about its long-term stability in some of the stitches. In all honesty, it wasn't my favourite to work with. Other thought that I had on this kit, so in the kit you basically got all of the colours, a ball of each of the colours that you needed to make this hat, and a sort of tote bag. Obviously I was gifted this, but when I popped on over to the website to see if the kit was still available, and it is, basically there's no kind of discount on the kit. It's basically the same cost as if you were to buy one colour of each ball that you need for the hat. And I have an absolute ton of most of the colours left, with the exception of this sort of white, and even then I've got quite a lot left. I have almost full balls of the other colours, which, yeah, I mean, in terms of affordability, the price of the kit is £22.50. If they were able to actually make a kit that had the quantity of yarn required rather than just bunging in a ball of yarn, I'm sure they could probably half the cost of the kit and make it a little bit more accessible. As I say, I was gifted the kit, and I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, there were just a couple of thoughts on the kit itself. But not to detract from the project at all. I love this hat, and I think it's going to get a lot of wear when the autumn and winter rolls around. And I'm sure I'll find something to do with these yarns. But as I say, it just wasn't really my favourite to work with. It is nice and soft, but the fact that some of the bits of yarn were really fine kind of puts me off working with this one again, in terms of like purchasing. Obviously I will work with my leftovers. It's likely that I will actually make another hat from the book, because I've got plenty of yarn for another hat in amongst all of that. But yes, it was just the fact that some bits of the yarn were just so fine. Actually, I don't know if I'll be able to show you, there's one bit in there which is just, it's so super fine. I mean, the yarn seems fairly strong, but yeah, I just didn't enjoy it as much as other yarns that I've used. And obviously for colour work, where you're sort of pulling and stretching the yarn anyway, the fact that some of the strands were so fine means that a couple of the stitches sort of like disappear and you lose the stitch definition a little bit, particularly if you get a really fine bit next to a really slubby bit. The sort of slubby bit overtakes the stitch next to each other. So yeah, for colour work where you might want sort of a nice crisp sort of definedness to your pattern, yeah, it just wasn't my favourite to work with. I have two works in progress to share with you today. The first is a sock, and there hasn't really been much sock knitting going on around here for ages. I've lost my sock mojo a little bit. I think I've got 4 pairs of socks on the needles started that just haven't really seen the light of day for ages, and I've been pulling out yarns from my mystery box each month to try and knit through some of my commercial stash, and that's not really happening either. But I might catch up later on in the year. I'm sure my sock mojo will come back at some point. But I did go to the cinema last Monday, so I took a sock along with me to knit on, and these are the socks I'm making for my mother-in-law from the beautiful West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply, and this is the owl colourway. So last time you saw this sock, it was up here where the marker was, so I'd just done the cuff. So this week I managed to put on the leg and the heel. This is the second sock. I have the other one tucked away in my bag here. So yeah, my mother-in-law has super tiny feet, so one more cinema trip and this sock should be done. I'm probably not going to go to the cinema today, so might still be a couple of weeks before that project gets finished, but it's nice to have a little bit of progress on that, and that's living in my drawstring TARDIS bag. And then my final work in progress this week is a new cast on. It's living in one of my project bags. This is one of the first project bags that I ever made. It's from some vintage fabric from my grand stash, so this is a very special project bag for me. And I finally started this week my crazy Technicolor handspun shawl. So this is based on the pattern Helic by Stephen West, which is in the Wool Journey book from Pom Pom Press, and it's basically a very simple crescent shape shawl, garter stitch all the way with a few rows of eyelet thrown in. And the pattern encourages you to use different weights of yarn and just stripe everything in a really fun and crazy way. So I thought it would be the perfect project to use up some of my little samples of handspun, and this is my progress this week. So as you can see, I have made a fair amount of progress on this project. I'm not worrying about colour management or anything like that really. I'm just using up my handspun samples. So what I did earlier on in the week, and actually you might see a little snippet of it in the sort of peek at my week introduction to the video, one evening when we had really nice weather, I took my little basket of handspun yarns out into the garden, and I just laid them out in order of quantity, so how many meters of each yarn, because I figured obviously at the start of the shawl, if you had a small quantity, you could get a few rows, and then obviously as the rows get bigger, you need sort of more meters to work across each row. So yeah, I just laid them out in order of quantity and just put them back in my bag with a note of what was going to go where, cast on, and went for it. So I'm having a lot of fun with this shawl. I decided not to worry too much, as I say, about colour management or anything like that. I have made one change, however, to my shawl so far. So basically, and it might not be super obvious because I've only just started the next colour, but after this bright green stripe here, I had a bright yellow yarn coming next, and when I started knitting with the bright yellow, although I do have some bright colours down here, they're also sort of more muted and more heathered, whereas both the yellow and the green were fairly sort of flat colours, although the yellow does have a bit more to it. But I didn't want like a massive stripe of really brightness sort of in the middle there, so I decided to just stop at 2 rows of the yellow. I'm going into the next colour, and then I'll put the rest of the yellow in at some point later in the shawl probably. But there are some really fun memories in this shawl so far. So this green down here was the first, my first attempt at chain plying. I have got this orange one here was one of the first bits of fibre that I ever purchased. The pink and grey here was some of the first fibre I ever spun, and the green here was what was left over from that green gradient that I spun up recently and chain plied on my wheel. So that was my first chain plying on my wheel, and I left that bright green out of the gradient cowl that I showed a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, lots of fun memories in this shawl. It's going to be a crazy Technicolor dream shawl for sure. But I'm really enjoying working through it, and it's a nice one for, I've been craving a simple in front of the TV project for a little while now. That sort of niche is usually taken by socks, but as I say, I've just not had any sock mojo recently. But I've also been thinking, wouldn't this be a really fun sweater? I'm seeing sort of like a garter yoke in all of the fun hand spun colours, and then maybe a plain sort of body to tone it down a bit. What do you think? Would that sort of thing just be too crazy as a sweater? I don't know, maybe. Shawl is sort of like waving and bagging in places, so I think it's going to need an aggressive block, but that's probably just because the yarns are all sort of slightly different thicknesses and not the same consistency. But I think once it's blocked out, it won't be too bad, and obviously once it's at its full size and sort of wrapped and squished around your neck, you're not really going to see that anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that sort of thing. I'm just really having fun with the project, and it's so squishy. Garter stitch is lovely, isn't it? So yeah, that is the project that's been exciting me the most this week. I have also worked on the Midsummer Meadow sweater, the all over colourwork sweater that I showed last week, but I'm not going to show that today because I have basically just put all of the stitches onto waste yarn and it's taking a bath. So I'm at the point now where I can try it on for fit. So I really only added an inch or so to that this week. So I'm not going to show that this week, but hopefully there will be some more to report on that one next week. I do have one final section this week, and that is some lovely things that have come to live with me this week. I received the most delightful package this week. I'm not going to say who from because I didn't ask whether she would be okay with that. But basically earlier on in the year, I made up something for one of my lovely friends, and she sent me a massive parcel as a thank you. It was just so generous and so much. I mean, I wasn't expecting anything, but I feel a little bit guilty because she was just so very generous with what she sent me. So I thought I would just share some of the lovelies here before I wrap up the video. So I was sent both yarn and fibre, which is just amazing. So I'll show you the yarn first. These two beautiful skeins were packed up together. This one is from Easy Knits, and I've never tried any Easy Knits before, so I'm super excited. And look at that beautiful, beautiful orange colourway. Sorry, the light in here is just rubbish. I wish we were still outside. I do apologise. And this is the colour Leaf Crackle, and it's a merino cashmere nylon base, so it's so lovely and squishy. This one doesn't have a label on, so I don't know if it's also Easy Knits, but they go beautifully together. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to working with those. Not only did she send me those, but I also got this amazing kit from Artistic Yarns by Abby, and it's basically a self-patterning yarn. If you knit the yarn to a particular tension, it self-patterns into these cute little sheeps. So this is the whole kit. So there is a bag and some mini skeins and even some needles, as well as the main skein of yarn. So that's going to be a really fun one to play around with and see if I can actually get the sheeps to appear on those socks. To dig into these, I need some more hours in the day. If anyone has any to spare, please, can you throw them my way? And then fibre. None of these fibres are labelled, so I'm not quite sure where they've come from. But there are some amazing bats that she sent me, and also some rolags and some sort of spinny bits. I'll explain what I mean by that. So there's this amazing bat here with lots of blues, and there's purples and yellows and grey and lots of sparkle. It kind of reminds me of either a Spin City or a Siobhan's Crafts kind of thing, but there's no labelling on there, so I'm not 100% sure. Not only did she send me that, I've got this massive bat here, which, oh my god, I cannot wait. I literally cannot wait to spin this. Obviously this week I am going to continue to spin up my Hilltop Cloud Fibre because we're still in the midst of Tour de Fleece. But this will be next, because look at all those fun colours. I just can't wait to throw it on the wheel and see what I end up with. It's madness in the best way. And then there's also another little bat in that pack, which is also lots of really bright, fun colours. So I'm so excited to throw some of these on the wheel and see what kinds of yarn I get. Can't wait. And then there's some beautiful rolags, which I'm not going to take out of the pack. I think I'm going to spin these up this week because I have now that I've finished the natural Cambrian, sorry that's completely blowing out, I don't really have anything Hilltop Cloud suitable to spin on my spindles, and I'm trying to spin a little bit on my wheel and a little bit on my spindles every day, so I think I'm going to chuck these rolags on for a pop of really bright fun colour explosion. Yeah, so these will probably gonna be spun up really quickly. And then there's also this fun bag of locks, and also I think some sari silk on the back there. I've not really delved into playing with those sort of textures yet. I'm not sure how well my wheel will handle locks. The orifice isn't huge. But I watched a couple of videos on YouTube recently, who they were by, but basically the person was spinning on her spindle and then twisting some locks in for some really fun sort of art yarns. So I might have a play with that technique at some point after Tour de Fleece. So much wonderful stuff in that package. I was completely blown away. So thank you so much. You know who you are. Yeah, speechless. Okay, so that is everything this week. I thank you so much for sticking with me to the end if you have. As I say, I always appreciate the time that you spend with me. I'm sorry that the video has been a bit choppy and that we had to move location. Until next time, I hope that you are able to enjoy some of the things that you love. Great big woolly hugs to you all. Bye for now.